Isn't a strong national government dangerous? Won't it eventually swallow up the states? Well, that's the fear Alexander Hamilton answers in Federalist number 17, because he says power is like gravity. It naturally pulls closer to where people live, work, and care the most. And that means, well, it means local government, not national government, will always, rule our hearts. I'm Matt Haskell. I'm a high school history teacher, and we're going through the Federalist Papers, all 85 of them, and we're up to number 17 as we go through these things in numerical order. So let's set the stage here. So by 1787, critics of the Constitution, those anti-federalists, had shifted their argument. They no longer denied the need for a stronger union. Now they warned that it might become too strong, because they feared the federal government would crush the sovereignty of the states, states' rights. They would absorb all the power into a distant national capital. And Hamilton calls their fear, quote unquote, imaginary. Now, Hamilton's core argument, his thesis, it's rather reassuring. He said the people of the states would be too strongly attached to their local government to be seduced by the wiles of the federal government. In other words, he's saying national authority may be powerful, but state authority is personal. Now, if you have family, you have property, education, justice, all these things are local matters, and people will never stop caring most about what's closest to home. Now, Hamilton builds his argument on human nature. He's done this before because he says people identify most with the government they can see, that they trust what they can touch. And since local government controls everyday life, the courts, the roads, the schools, safety, it will command their attention, their affection. So national government, according to Hamilton, will be distant. It'll be abstract. It won't be as important. It will be less, beloved, I guess. And that's not a weakness, and it's balance. So Hamilton then lists the limited items or objects of federal authority, like foreign war and peace, commerce, taxation for national purposes, and then just like general laws that bind the whole union. Now, everything else, property, education, criminal law, public order, all those things belong to the states. And so that is the federal principle in action. You have power that is divided by the hierarchy of the federal government at the top and the states below. It's not divided by that hierarchy. It's instead divided by the purpose. So each level then governs where it is most competent. Now, Hamilton just kind of dismisses the idea that the federal officials would crave local power, because he wrote in the essay that the members of the national legislature will have no temptation to encroach upon the local jurisdiction of the states. So why would Congress want to manage county roads or probate courts? There's no glory and no profit in the micromanagement of municipalities and counties and things like that. So Hamilton will argue that ambition will focus on national issues like the great interests of war and peace and trade, commerce, right? And Hamilton says that attachment to the states is deeply emotional. It's almost tribal. He reminds readers that before the Revolution, people thought of themselves as Virginians and New Yorkers and Carolinians before they thought of themselves as Americans. Now, that identity doesn't vanish overnight, and the Constitution is far from erasing it. It relies on that. And so the federal government then depends on state governments for elections, the enforcement of law, and representation. And these are all like woven together. They're not enemies, they're partners. So Hamilton then looks to Europe again for examples, going on to his history, right? He notes that in confederations like Germany, because Germany is not yet unified, or ancient Greek leagues, local princes and city-states always held on to more affection and loyalty than a central authority ever could. Even monarchs couldn't destroy local attachment. So why would a republic try to? So he's saying history itself proves that localism will win out. Now, this number 17 here, it's one of Hamilton's most, I guess you could say, psychological essays. He says that you don't need to rely solely on laws to preserve local government. Human nature will do it automatically. Ambition, pride, and affection will protect the sovereignty of the states. People will defend what they feel belongs to them. And once again, we go back to the essay where Hamilton writes, "It is therefore improbable that the federal government will absorb those powers which the people have not conferred upon it." So, if it's not given to the government through the consent of the governed, then there's nothing to worry about here. The federal government's not going to absorb those things. So, let's go ahead and look at Hamilton's chain of reasoning like we've done here the last few times. So, let's tighten his logic down. First, he'll say that federal power covers national interests only. And then he adds to that, secondly, that state governments control local life. Third, he's going to say people are more loyal to their local institutions. And then ambition and affection protect state authority naturally. And then finally, the Constitution's design reinforces, not replaces, that balance. So, there's your homework for Federalist number 17. There's your summary. So, the real threat, though, is if you like, interestingly enough, Hamilton kind of flips the fear on its head. He says, the danger isn't that the federal government will overtake the states, but that the states will resist the Union too fiercely. Now, he says that local passion, he's warning folks here, local passion can be just as destabilizing as any distant power. Balance, not domination, is the actual goal. And so that's what makes federalism this, it makes it like an equilibrium, but it's like a living equilibrium. So, now, why does it matter? What's the modern echo? How's this matter in our lives? Well, we're over, almost 250 years later. Well, not quite 250 for the Constitution, but over 200 years later, we still have this same debate: federal versus state power, local control versus national standards. I mean, we're living that right now. And his insight, it remains true. The real test of government isn't which level will win, but it's whether both can coexist without collapse. So the Constitution's design allows for tension because tension does provide a degree of stability. And so the takeaways here, the three takeaways that we've been doing through these videos, I think you can say the first one is that human nature protects local authority better than any clause or referendum or law. The second thing you could say is that federal power is strong, but it's specific. It governs great concerns, not like minuscule or petty concerns. And then thirdly, the Constitution's genius lies in its balance, not in the fact, not in uniformity. It's about the balance. So as we kind of wrap up 17 here, I think Federalist number 17 is Hamilton's reassurance in an age of anxiety. Hamilton says that strength doesn't mean domination, and unity doesn't mean uniformity. The Constitution instead creates a system where national and state powers reinforce rather than replace each other, because each is guarding liberty in its own particular way. So, as I'm wrapping up, I'm Matt Hasquin, and this is another one of those things I think we should all know just by being alive. If this helped you see how America's federal balance was built on, both trust and design, please, do the appropriate things with it. And stay around. I'm going to go ahead and go into Federalist 18 next. And this is where Madison, once again, comes back with us, and he joins the conversation. And this time he's going to examine the failures of past confederacies and what they can teach us about, preserving our own relationships, all right, on the national level. All right. Hey, thanks a bunch. I hope you made it this far. Thanks for watching.